You can find all sorts of examples of internal hypocrisies and contradictions on the left and the right and everywhere in between, where you make allowances for your own people while being outraged by the exact same sort of behaviors from the other team. I remember to be using, which always stuck with me, was slavery. Slavery is evil. I think people on the left like to virtue signal and wear on their sleeve that they really hate slavery more than people on the right do, because they like to sort of use racism as one of these defining differences. I'm not saying there's no racism, I'm not saying it's all illegitimate, but like trying to pin pro-slavery stuff on the right is really tiresome to me. Like trying to make Ron DeSantis into somehow being responsible for this racist shooter in Florida is ridiculous to me, but it's sort of a symbol of what I'm talking about, right? The way that the Democrats constantly want to go to Jim Crow language and say this is Jim Crow 2.0, Jim Crow and steroids and all that kind of stuff, is they want to own the anti-slavery, abolitionist, pro-civil rights side. But if you are a real abolitionist, right, if you really want to be part of that tradition, you should be a lot more worked up about the fact that there's slavery in lots of parts of the world. To listen to a lot of people talk about Jim Crow, you would think that Jim Crow was primarily about preventing people from voting. That was part of it, and that was bad, right? The reason why they wanted to keep black people from voting was so they could keep in place the really evil policies. The voting stuff was a means to an end. It wasn't the end. It was like, black people can't get to the polls, we win. That wasn't the point. It was black people can't get to the polls to vote to change these apartheid policies that we have. It was the apartheid policies that they wanted to keep. They see Jim Crow as a profound evil. Fair enough. They see what South Africa did as a profound evil under apartheid. Fair enough, right? But were it not for the parallels people found between whites and blacks in South Africa, I doubt South Africa would have become much of an issue in the United States. It felt like it mapped onto a domestic political argument that was seen as proof about how white conservatives who had certain foreign policy views, well, really, they were also racist. Look, they support apartheid in South Africa. Meanwhile, China is a Jim Crow country. It's just a flat out Jim Crow country. I mean, or apartheid country. I mean, you pick your labels. If you're not Han Chinese, you are a second class citizen at best in China. If you are a Uyghur, you're basically like a Jew in Germany prior to the switch over to the final solution stuff. You are harassed anywhere you travel in the country if you're a Uyghur. You are constantly asked for your papers. You are not allowed to travel often. And remember, one of the most important aspects of Jim Crow was the travel part. When the Civil War ends, they imposed Jim Crow in part because former enslaved people, because they had freedom of movement, they could go to where wages were good or better. And all of a sudden you had plantation owners and agricultural interests having not only to pay for labor, but to compete for labor and for wages with other firms, in effect. One of the essence of Jim Crow, at least in the beginning, was to prevent the ability of now free citizens of the United States to sell the sweat of their brow and the fruits of their labors in the market. This is why one of the many reasons I despise all the ways in which people try to make Jim Crow a feature of capitalism, or slavery a feature of capitalism. You know who hated slavery and thought it didn't work? Adam Smith. Regardless, China has slave labor. China has straight up work camps and re-education camps where they're torturing Uyghurs by the hundreds of thousands. And they definitely have a system of Jim Crow. And that's just not a sophisticated, enlightened thing to talk about in the United States, because Hollywood wants to do business there. Academia is deeply compromised by its relationship with China. I think that's starting to change, but big tech is deeply compromised with its relationship with China. And those sorts of institutions do not map easily left-right in the ways that they otherwise might, and it's a way to make this an issue. And so the whole fact that China is nationalist, nativist, bigoted, racist, and imperialist falls by the wayside. If you believe that white supremacy in the United States is a real thing and a real agenda, but you don't care about Han supremacy, which is a real thing that's like written into law. It's policy from the top down. It's policy enforced in courts. It's policy enforced at the street level by cops who hit non-Han Chinese over the head if they talk back with the butts of their guns. It's a bigoted society.